Welcome to another DHR podcast. I was so excited when our guest today said yes to me to being on this podcast on LinkedIn. And just because she has such a range of knowledge, she has worked for some very prominent companies ranging from Hilton Hotels to American Express. She has written and published articles on Inman and Real Trends. And what she's doing now is she's taking her fascination in data analytics and all of her real estate sales and marketing experience, and she's blending it all together to help real estate brokerages improve their agent acquisition along with retention. I had the pleasure of being on the receiving end of what she calls the 4 main pillars of agent recruitment, and she went over the importance of acquisition and retention of realtors grounded in brand clarity, well-defined agent personas, and impactful training. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Diana Zaya.
Long story. So I actually got into real estate probably about 25 years ago. I was maybe a little less than 25. I'm going to date myself. I was 25 years old at the time, and I had decided to get into real estate. I got my license at the time. In Chicago, you can become a licensed real estate agent in 1 week. So I took a 40-hour course 1 week, got licensed, had no idea what I was doing, and became an agent. So did that for a while, and then kind of went away from the industry after the '08 housing collapse. Went back to my roots, which were in hospitality, led sales teams for Hilton, Hyatt hotels, and then came back to the industry several years ago, working for a data provider.
Oh, nice. Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was a long
25
time
years.
ago.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was
And
after 9/11. I actually was working for
wow.
American Express and I was working in their corporate travel division. And when
Mhm.
9/11 happened, we all got laid off. And I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't know that people at my age could get laid off. And so it was kind of like a shock to the system. And that's why I decided, well, I want to work for myself and I'm going to get into real estate, and then pursued that.
Yeah. And then you start off as a real estate agent. And so how did you, first off, how did that go? Like, how was the whole real estate experience? And then how did you make your way towards the data and analytics side?
Yeah, so when I was working in real estate, I ended up interviewing with a couple of different firms. I went to like 3 or 4 different firms. I just knew, you don't know what you don't know. And I tried to learn as much as I could, interviewed with a few of them, and finally settled in on one. And honestly, it was a great decision. Loved my broker, loved working there, did really well. So my first year, and I want to share this, if any agents are listening, if you have a really bad first year, don't let that discourage you. So I came into real estate in February. Okay. So I had almost a year.
Mhm.
Like that year that I came in was like a full year. I ended up selling nothing my first year, not one
Mhm.
transaction.
Mhm.
It was really discouraging. And my second year, I did a lot better. By my third year, I was selling close to 4 million in real estate
Oh,
and was
wow.
considered an up and comer in my office, won several awards, and was tasked with leading a couple of committees within our firm. So I was leading a marketing committee and I was leading a first time home buyer committee. And so it was amazing to see the acceleration. So I like to share that because I know this business can be tough,
Mhm.
especially that first year.
Yeah. You know what's crazy, Diana? I have a very similar story, and it starts with me my first year. I believe it was like 10 months before I had my first closing.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I came straight out of out of college. I actually dropped out of college, and then all I did was play basketball in college, and that's all I knew. And so my first like actual business was real estate. And so I went in and I was just learning as much as possible from the people that were in my office, because I was in KW, and it was a really cool KW office over here. And then at the same time, like I wish I could like turn my screen around. I have a library of books that's up halfway up the to the roof, and it's nothing but sales books, marketing books, systems books, just any
Yeah.
sort of business books that I can get my
Mhm.
hands on. And that's what I was doing the first 10 months. And so,
Yeah.
but it's interesting because I think a lot of real estate agents, like that's their, and it's crazy because they think they're doing something wrong when
Right.
it's like, well, maybe not really. Maybe it's just that's the process in real estate just because the buying cycles are so long.
Well, and it's so easy to get into, well, at least at that time when I got into it. I mean, I went to a 1 week course and a lot of it was learning real estate law. You really weren't learning how to work with a buyer, how to list a property. You weren't learning sales and marketing techniques. You didn't learn how to write a contract,
Mm-hmm.
so there was a huge learning curve that first year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I would just say to agents, don't get discouraged. And
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the head when you said we've got all these books. You really, that first year, you need to really absorb as much knowledge and education as you can.
Mm-hmm. 100%. 100%. And then you said you started leading teams?
Yeah, not like teams as we know them today. They were more like it was more committees within our firm. So I ended up, the reason I did so well, I'll just kind of back up. The reason I did so well that third year in was I assembled a team that I was working with as far as like an insurance agent, an attorney, a mortgage lender. So I had like my people where we were constantly referring business to. And we ended up doing, because I was so young, I was working with a lot of first time home buyers, which, initially were my friends. And then
Mm-hmm.
my friends would refer me to their friends and their friends. So I became known for, being the first time home buyer agent. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started hosting, and I think they were more comfortable with me because they could relate to me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas somebody who was twice my age is like, what do you know, kid?
Yeah.
Um, have you ever listed a home? And the answer was like, no.
Yeah.
So, so I started hosting first time home buyer seminars. We'd work with local restaurants. We'd get a little space. We'd, all pitch in and buy appetizers and send out invites to our database and, to people in the community. And they actually got really popular, and it was a tremendous source of leads for us at the time. So,
Mm-hmm. Very
so it was,
cool.
yeah. So on the committees, I was teaching those techniques to other agents, and actually quite a few seasoned agents were attending the classes that I was hosting. And then also, I love lead gen. I love marketing. So
Mm-hmm.
you tend to be naturally good at what you love. And so I ended up heading off a marketing committee as well.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Dang, you did a lot.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It's fun when you're your own boss because you can be creative and kind of like set the tone for what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you don't feel like there's any wasted time because you are the master of your schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. And then I'm assuming when you got into when you started looking at the marketing side of real estate, that's where all of your did it turn into like a fascination of data because you started to see that, all of, I would say, well, in my opinion, I don't know if this is true or not, but the best marketing campaigns come from the best research of what the customers are doing in the market.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I didn't really know it at the time, but I was heavily looking at, like, I was poring over my numbers, I was looking at reports, and obsessing over it. And
Mm-hmm.
when I ended up leaving real estate and kind of going back to hospitality, I took a role doing on the sales and marketing side for initially for Hyatt and then ultimately for Hilton, and was leading sales teams. And so the obsession with the numbers grew a little bit more. But it
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't until I came back to the industry and joined my previous employer, Relitics. I was part of the founding team at Relitics about 3.5 years ago that I became completely obsessed with data analytics. I absolutely love how you can use these numbers to give you tremendous insight into your business and into better decision making.
Mm. Mm. So like getting right into it, like what would be, let's see, do you look at it just from the broker side or are you also looking at it from a real estate perspective as well?
So I look at it on the broker side in my consulting work now. So I formed Maverick Real Estate Consulting about 2 to 3 months ago. And in my consulting work, I help real estate brokerages specifically use data and agent recruitment.
Mm.
Because when I was at Relitics, we we had a lot of large clients. Some of the largest firms and teams in the nation were clients. And the advantage to that was I had firsthand experience to the decisions that they were making and how they were using data and how they were running their recruitment programs. I got to see the good, bad, and the ugly. We got to see what worked, what didn't work, saw the outcomes of their decisions. And we had a tremendous amount of data on every firm. So I can tell you what, every team was doing, what every firm is doing, what their agent pool looks like, how skilled they are in taking listings. I mean, you name it, we knew the data on them. So it's this like really intimate glimpse into a firm. And what that did is it revealed some areas for me where there were some areas I saw across the board that processes were broken, and where there were gaps or roadblocks. And that's why firms, despite their best efforts, were not getting the kind of results they wanted to get agent recruitment wise.
In what way, you said you seen like roadblocks, like in what way? I have another question too out of that, but like in what roadblocks were you seeing specifically with brokerages and recruiting?
So in my consulting work, I look at 4 areas. I call them sort of like the 4 pillars of agent recruitment. So you want to start with the leadership team. Leadership teams go into their quarterly planning, annual planning, right? And you set your goals for the year. Like you go into your strategic planning and you set goals. Oftentimes, those initiatives are coming from experience or they're coming from gut instincts, right? This is a people business. We're very we've got good instincts in this business. And so oftentimes we are not necessarily relying on the data to drive our decision making, but we're making it based off experience and gut. So I would start there is when making decisions, look to the data to make those decisions. Start with the problem or the opportunity that you want to pursue, and then pull the data together. And a good data analyst, which our team, we work with the data analyst, will organize the data, they'll clean it, they'll structure it, they'll analyze it, they'll visualize it, and the data then tells a story. So as a leader, you can look at the data and know exactly where you need to make adjustments in your business. So I would start there. The other thing with leadership is there's typically what's called the strategy execution gap. So leadership or companies are hierarchically structured. So leadership team sits at the very top, they make decisions, and then they transmit that message through the different layers of the organization. So unfortunately, what can happen is as that message filters down through the organization, 2 things happen. Number 1, that message becomes diluted. And number 2, there's a conflict in priorities, right? So leadership says we need to, grow into these 3 markets through targeted recruitment. The people that carry out that task typically are recruiters or office managers. So when you look at a CEO's priorities, they're not really in line with the manager's priorities, right? There's a conflict in priorities there, where the manager may be well-intentioned and may say, well, yeah, I believe in recruitment, we have to do it. And they may have every good intention to do it. But really, a manager's priority typically is to take care of their office, run the office, take care of their agents. So we start by addressing that. So that can cause a roadblock when we're talking about recruitment. The other areas that I look at that I think are equally as important is looking at sales and marketing optimization. So what I mean by that is taking a snapshot of your roster to see, let's get a lay of the land. What do our agents look like? Are we typically recruiting newer? Are they experienced? Are they luxury? What is our brand? Who's our persona? Who's our defined agent? Once we have that, we can then say, okay, well, this is what we're working with now. What do we want to look like in a year? And from there, we can create goals, because those goals can be then communicated to the people that are actually doing the recruitment. And the reason that's important is if you don't know what your goal is, then you're not going to reach that target, right? You have to have something to aim for. And the other component of that is once we've got our goals and we've done our roster review and we know exactly what types of agents we need to recruit, then we can get to the work of defining the value prop. The value prop for a newer agent is different than the value prop for an experienced agent. Like, what does your firm do really well that's going to resonate with this agent? And then all the communications, all the messaging should follow that, right? But equipping managers with, how do you overcome objection? Who are you selling against? Like traditional sales techniques and tactics, right? The other thing I look at is tech. And that's very important because I have worked with multiple companies that have many offices, and one office will be using a certain tech stack while another is using another one. Like they're using different CRMs, different data providers. And I think you can't streamline it if it's not standardized, right? You can't have a streamlined process if we don't standardize across the board. Or oftentimes you'll have tech that's competing with one another. Like you'll have 3 different softwares that all have email capabilities, so, so streamlining that and then putting the structure, the system in place, documenting the process and repeating it. So then you're not really relying on a person, you're rather relying on the structure that we've built to get the outcomes that you want.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Man, at every single one of those stages. So the 4 stages was leadership team, define the agent, like basically the people, the type of real estate agents that they want in the brokerage, create a value prop for them specific for that demographic, for that, I would say ICP. And then, and then what technology are guys using and making sure that everybody's on the same page. I could literally go into every single one of those and unpack every single one of them. Let's see. So the defining the agent in from all of the data that you've looked at, do you see the teams that are doing very well? And then we can define what very well means. I'm assuming it's like transactional volume that they're bringing in. The teams that are doing very well, do you see that they're focused on like, we just want top producers, or we just want whatever type of real estate agent in this brokerage, and then just everything else that we're fine with, we're fine with not having? Or do you see the brokerages being more successful where it's just like, we'll take any real estate agent coming into our brokerage?
Yeah, and that's really funny because I see both. I've seen both.
Oh,
And
really
both
interesting.
have worked. One is much more systematic, and I've met teams that are highly systematic. They're very clear on exactly what their agent persona is, how they go about recruitment, and they're constantly repeating the same thing. They're very successful with that. And then on the flip side, I've seen people that say, well, I'll just recruit anyone. I feel like that works, but it has a lot more chaos to it, that kind of recruit everybody, because a lot of people aren't going to work for your firm, so they're going to leave and then you have to recruit more. I would say go ahead and communicate to everyone. If you have, an MLS that has 10,000 agents in it and you're like, well, I just want to email everyone, I want to communicate with everyone, that's fine. But I would still define your personas, create your value prop, and create lead magnets and messaging to resonate with that bucket of agents. You can still target everyone, but you want the messaging to be customized to that person. Because if you think about the mindset of a brand new agent or agent that's 1 year in the business, their psychographics are different than somebody who's been in the business 10 years. And the message you communicate to them is going to be very different than the message you communicate to somebody that's more seasoned. So I think in the age of data, because we're so data rich in anything that we do, we can rely on it to make our interactions more meaningful and more targeted rather than blanket spamming people.
Yeah. Interesting. That makes me think about, I was speaking to a broker, and he was saying that he was having the problem of a majority of the real estate agents in his office, they weren't producing at the level that he wanted them to produce at. And it's just because the median home price in his market was, I think he said a million, like a little bit above $1 million. And so that means that the agents don't need to close a lot of homes in order to make, really good, decent living where they're at. And so he's like, only if I could push those agents to, instead of closing 5 deals a year, and they're just good with that, to get them to either like, boost that up like 50% or even 100%. And then I asked him why. I was like, well, why do you think that they're not doing that? And he said, like, he kept mentioning ego. And he's like, they're making $120,000 a year, selling 6 homes. And so he's like, there's no they feel that they don't need any more training. They don't need, to go to any more marketing and sales classes. They don't need to do any of that. They're just comfortable where they're at. And then it made me question, I didn't really ask him this question, but then it made me question. It's like, well, then why even have those agents in the office if you're worried about production?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so, like, what would you say to a broker like that?
I think it's important to really think about what you look like today as a business and what your culture is. And are you happy with that? Are you
Mm-hmm.
good with that? And
Mm-hmm.
if you can design your dream firm and your dream agent pool, what would that look like? And if the two don't match, then I would say you've probably got some decisions to make.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to make them all today. They can be made over time. But that's why I really think like strategic planning is really important too, because it'll cast a vision of the future of where you want to be. Then you know where to drive your ship, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, man, like it's in that like specific scenario, like I was just like kind of in awe by like, you know, how much he was like, oh, I want to change everything, but I'm at the same time okay with where everything's at. And
yeah.
so I'm like, okay, then it's very interesting, some individuals. Do you collect any sort of qualitative data from the real estate agents?
Well, so when I work with a firm, I'll take whatever data they can give me. There is certain data that I'm looking for, like certain analyses that I'm looking for. I
Mm,
really want as much data as I can about the agents themselves. So not just production and whether they're up or down year over year, but I want to see how many years in business they've been, what their median close price is, when their last transaction was, and many other data fields. But that's going to give me an idea of what your firm looks like. I'm
mhm,
also looking at agent source data. So when you are getting appointments with agents, what was the source? Where did they come from? And
mm,
and what are the conversion rates? Because we want to analyze all of that. And funny enough, so at my former company, we I looked at our data, because I was always pouring over it, and I found that in one particular year, almost 40% of our business came from email campaigns. And anyone that
mm,
knows me knows I love email campaigns, especially if they're like, really good targeted data rich email campaigns. So
mhm,
40% of our business came from there. But when I looked at our conversion rates, it was like under 30%. I think it was like 28, something like that.
mhm,
And then I looked at our referral business, which the conversion rate was almost 50%, but it
mm,
only equated to 10% of our business. And I thought, that's very revealing. Referrals
yeah,
are converting at almost double the rate, but yet they amount for only 10% of our business. And so when we looked at our business, it's like, well, we had made a huge investment of time, and not really money because email campaigns are really affordable, but a huge investment of time in the email campaigns where we really didn't build out the referral program. They just sort of came to us. And it was like,
mhm,
well, that's a shift in strategy. When you're looking
mhm,
at numbers like that's going to tell you, hey, when we go into our planning, we may want to think about building out this referral program.
mhm,
So I take the same approach with like clients that I work with, is to dig
mhm,
into that kind of data. Another analysis that I really like to do is agent movement trends. So I want to look at when agents come to your firm, where do they come from? When they leave, where are they going? Why do they go? Why do they come?
mm,
How long do they stay? Because all of that is going to help shape how we approach sales and marketing, how we approach our recruiting calls. It's going to shape all the strategies that we take when we are engaging with agents in our market.
yeah, yeah. That's so interesting. I want to spend a day with you, just like look at how your brain works and what you're looking at. Like that'd be so cool. Just to, I'm very fascinated when people are like really into their specialty and it seems like you're an individual that like you really enjoy like what you're doing. And so, when I meet people like that, I'm always like fascinated by the way that your brain works. And I'm like, if only if I could just sit there and just watch her and just ask her questions every time she like finds something or something in that nature, that'd be super cool. That'd be a fun
Oh,
day
that's
for me.
funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, let me know if you're in
And
Chicago.
I
We'll meet
will.
up. We'll grab a drink.
Nice, nice, super cool. Um, Okay, so going back to the 4 pillars that you have, when it comes to the technology that some of the brokerages are using, do you see often that real estate agents are, um, well, let me ask this first. When you said that there are sometimes people, one, that the brokerage has multiple pieces of technology and those technologies overlap in features.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like the agents using like third-party pieces of technology that are already in-house, or were you talking about like the agents using multiple of those in-house pieces of technology?
Yeah, I'm referring to like the brokers and managers. So if you go into a firm, for example, that has, it's a large firm with like 30 offices, right? And typically the managers are tasked with agent recruitment. And you can go to each manager and one manager will say, well, I'm using this CRM, or another one is working off of a spreadsheet because they don't like technology, or another one is using something else I've never heard of. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's a real issue, because if we can standardize it across the company, bring everybody up to the same level. They don't have to be super tech savvy, because I realize that some people love technology and some don't, but to a sort of like a basic level of usage and understanding on these platforms, it's going to make agent recruitment, you're going to build in efficiency. The other thing that happens is when you standardize and document, if a person leaves the firm, you're not relying on that person and whatever system they had made up that you now have to sort through. You can just hire somebody else and slot them right in, because it's the structure and the system and the process that works for the person. And so training is a lot easier. You can ramp them up a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Very interesting. That's very interesting. Um, I was gonna ask questions. I constantly have to steer my mentality over to the brokerage side, just
Yeah,
because because when I was a real estate agent, I feel like I have a good sense of like everything that goes on into the real estate agent business. But now
right.
I'm like introducing myself to the brokerage side and some of the problems that they have. I'm like in my mind as you're talking, I'm like, well, I have a question about the agents, and I'm like, wait, no, let's look at the brokerage side. And so,
Yeah. Well, what's funny on the brokerage side, so I was at a conference recently, and I kind
mhm,
of wanted the other perspective. I wanted the agent's perspective, because it's been a number of years since I was an agent. I left the business, I think, in '08, and then
mhm,
came back to it a few years ago. So I was at a conference that there were agents at this conference, and I made it a point to go around and really pick their brain, because I was interested. Like, hey, do you get a lot of recruiting calls? How many do you get? Are you ever interested? Or do they resonate with you? And overwhelmingly, it was like, yes, I get a ton of calls. No, I'm not interested. I wish that they would stop calling. But when
mhm,
I asked the question, well, if somebody called you and they had warmed it up by sending you something of value in advance, or they called you with something about your business that they knew that you didn't know, or there was something there that, number one, warmed up the call, and number two, added value, would
mhm,
you be a little bit more interested, or would they grab your attention? Overwhelmingly, the answer was yes, that they
mm,
would take the call and that they would listen, even if it was for a few seconds. And,
mm,
it's the same thing that I've taught salespeople throughout my careers. I'm not a huge fan of cold calls. I generally believe that if you are a company that's going to be cold calling, number one, you have to do it in volume, because cold calling, it's a numbers game. And so if you're going to do it in volume, I think it's difficult to ask a manager to make cold calls, because they have so many other things that really take priority. So you're probably better outsourcing it to a professional agency that can conduct those calls for you. However, when I was leading sales teams, I was never like a huge fan of dialing for dollars, like make 100 calls a day. I just don't think it's an efficient use of your time.
mhm,
But I do believe in cold calling. I think that they
mhm,
should be well researched. They should be warmed up. There should be some sort of connection. Try to get a referral, connect with them on LinkedIn, send something of value, and then follow it up with a call,
mhm.
and
Yeah,
you're going to have much better results that way.
yeah. That, yeah, that's interesting. It makes me think about other methods when it comes to sales and marketing for agent recruitment? Like, what have you seen been like the most effective methods that brokerages have been using to recruit the agents that they want?
Honestly, being really smart with the data, being data rich, having a lot of information about somebody. And the reason this is why I talk so much about creating defined agent personas, because what happens is you can take a huge number of people that all look alike, that are in the same place in their business, and you can create one message and mass send it out to them. So number one, the message is going to feel customized to them. It's going to contain information that is going to resonate with them, but then you can do it on a large scale. So you're not sending one at a time. One of the
Mm,
things that I absolutely love to do was create merge tags in my email campaigns. And I would write one email message, but merge in specific information about that person that I was sending it to. So I can easily send out 8,000 emails, but they all have information that's unique to you, and
mm-hmm,
so I think that's why we did so well with our email campaigns, and I always tried to send something of value, or I'd
mm-hmm,
link to something that they can download, whether it was an article or, whatever it was that I thought might be worthwhile for them.
mm-hmm,
Things like that, or I would give them a strategy on how to recruit agents, or what's going on in
mm-hmm.
your market, or anything like that. Um, Instead of just, and I always use plain text. That's the other thing. When you're emailing, I don't generally use templated emails unless I'm sending like webinar info or an article. But if I'm sending out a sales email and asking for an appointment, I don't send anything templated. I use plain text email, and you can send those in mass.
Mm, very useful. I'm gonna start doing that. I actually just started testing. I just started testing the Loom like the video
Oh
emails,
yeah,
sending those out. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. When I'm doing my prospecting, um yeah, I'm testing it right now, and so far it's not going well. But that's how everything starts out when when you have an
yeah.
hypothesis
It's
about a marketing campaign.
work in progress, right? No, I absolutely
Yeah.
love sending video. I think video is a great way for people to get to know you. Then you don't feel
Mm-hmm.
like such a stranger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Um, do you see the production? Do you see any sort of correlation between agent production and recruitment and retention?
With the newer agents, so at my former company, we had this analytic. We developed. It was a deep learning model actually that would predict a newer agents' future success probability. And
Mm,
what we were grading was staying power and earning potential. Are they likely to stay in business, and are they likely to produce? What we found was if newer agents were taking listings early in their career, if they hit a certain production benchmark, they were much more likely to remain in business and hit a certain production parameter.
mm,
So you want to look early in their careers. So somebody like myself who had sold nothing their first year was
mhm,
likely not to stay in business. Although
mm,
the acceleration that I saw by my third year was sort of like wildly out of the norm. Like you didn't go from nothing to almost 4 million in a couple of years, but it was a good
mhm,
market, and I found a niche, and, so it worked out for me.
yeah.
But yeah, you can tell typically if with newer agents, if they're I'd say the biggest indicator of future success is if they're taking a listing early in their career.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Interesting. Very interesting. And it makes me think like why do you think like real estate agents, especially in like those big franchises like KW, Coldwell Banker, like Century 21, that have literally all of the technology and all of the resources necessary to get an agent producing, like what do you think is the thing that prevents that agent from, getting in there? And if somebody is willing to put in the work, which I'm assuming the majority of real estate agents are, like it's like what is preventing them from not producing and then ending up at a bar with other real estate agents, getting recruited to another brokerage and thinking that it's the brokerage's problem while they're not producing?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there's probably two major things I'm thinking off the top of my head. I think a lot of real estate agents aren't doing it as a full-time business, that they have another gig, and that may be
Mm-hmm.
why we see the numbers we see. But for the people that are fully committed, all in, this is our full-time job, there's a lot to know in real estate. There's a huge learning curve. And so I think you need to go into the business expecting not to make a lot of money right away.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that does something to you psychologically. If I go in knowing that I'm not going to earn a ton of money my first year, and I'm prepared for that, then I can spend that first year laying a solid foundation, learning the business, learning sales, learning marketing, learning how to write a business plan, doing all of that foundational stuff that will ultimately lead to my success. However, I think a lot of people come into the business wanting to make money right away. Of course, we all have bills to pay, and they haven't planned to take several months without a paycheck. And so what that does to you is it creates a sense of urgency that I need to get a deal. And so you can have this sort of like cart before the horse mentality where you're trying so hard to get a deal and you're driving buyers around and, showing homes that you really haven't done the foundational work. So the results don't come. And which in turn makes people more desperate. And, and it's sort of like this cycle, where, get a mentor, maybe join a team early on. I think teams are a great place for new agents to like learn the ropes, So,
Yeah.
I would say early in your career, give up more of your commission to learn the ropes.
100%. That's exactly what I did. After going 10 months without closing anything, I got a mentor, and literally it was the next month. I closed my first deal, then the next month that turned into 2 deals, and then it went on and on. And so, it's just Diana, like and I'm gonna find it. Like I'm gonna find the problem, if I haven't found it already. But I find it amazing how I think we all know that when you first get into real estate, especially being brand new, there's this, I would say month-long learning curve. It's not like going into a company and, and I would say like, I don't know how long it takes. It would obviously depend on the position. But I find it amazing how brokerages know that, like, or maybe they don't know that an agent is going to come in and there's going to be a learning curve. They're going to need a mentor. They're going to need a systems in play in order to run their business. They're going to need marketing and sales because they need to get business. And then they need to know how to service that business, all the contracts and learning about escrow and et cetera. And so it's like, as a brokerage, knowing that, it just like surprises me. It's like, why don't they have some sort of structure for the real estate agents? Like every single agent that comes into the brokerage, regardless of what type, why isn't there some sort of structure for each one of them? And I mean, that's just like a curious question of mine.
Yeah, no, I agree. And some firms do it really well. Some firms don't do it at all. I have a friend of mine, Amy Charu at Curated Learning. Actually, her and I were just talking about this. She has an amazing onboarding program that she rolls out to the brokerage that they can roll out to their agents when they bring them on board. So it gets them really acclimated to the firm, where they need to go to get whatever they need and get them like up and running a lot more quickly and more efficiently, you know. But yeah, I also think like mentorship is really important. And again, some firms do this better than others. I have a friend that got into real estate about a year or two ago, and she calls me often, kind of like a little disillusioned and a little disheartened that she's not getting the support that she had expected. So, it happens, because typically when you're assigned to a mentor, that mentor is running their own business as well, so again, it's like that conflict in priorities. So that's why I say, well, if you are new, really look to go without a paycheck and look to maybe give up a little bit more of your own money, because you're not really giving up money. You're investing in yourself. You're investing in training is the way that I would look at it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, man, I need to talk to Amy, and see how she is, whatever sort of system she's put in play in order for brokerages to onboard agents and get them up and, productive as fast as possible. Because I think that's like a huge, from what I've seen, the brokers that I've spoken to, real estate agents that I've spoken to, like it doesn't make sense. This is how I think about it, Diana. I think that I think of it like a corporation. If I had 70 to 80% of my salespeople that weren't consistently producing, and I had
Right.
200 of them, like that just doesn't make sense to me. And so, yeah, and I just think that's one of the problems. Like as soon as they got into the brokerage is like, we have this tool and that technology and this great thing and that great thing, and when you
Yeah.
come in, you're going to start, producing, and then they realize that it's not that. And I think one of the problems is like it's just this lack of structure. And so I think of it like have you seen like Formula One? Are you familiar with the sport Formula
Like
One
the
racing?
racing.
Hmm.
I mean, I know of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
think they were
so
in Chicago this summer. There was some racing event in Chicago this summer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Me too. Like I know of it. I just got introduced to it to a friend, and so like I'm starting to
Okay.
watch it a little bit more. And so, but I think of it like this. Like I think of it like real estate agents are the race car drivers, and they're looking to pick a team to race for, whether it's Mercedes or Ferrari, and all the teams are like, oh, come to our team because we have the latest in technology, we have the best tires, we have the best equipment and all that. And then as soon as a real estate agent gets in the door, they're like, "Where's my car?" And then the team's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, well, you have to build it." And then
Go
he's like,
build
"Well,
it,
what do you
right?
mean? Yeah, what do you mean I have to build it?" And he's like, "Yeah, you learn all the technology, learn all the engineering, learn all the." And he's like, "But I'm a race car driver." And it's like that's how I see the real estate industry. And to where it's like they hire on all of these real estate agents and they're like, "We have the best in everything," which they do. I really, being at KW, I've seen what Century 21 has, I've seen what Coldwell Banker has, I've seen like a lot of the technology and resources that these companies have, from support and training to technology, everything. And I'm like, how could you not produce? And I think the missing piece is structure. And it's just because they're contractors. Like you can't really tell real estate agents in America what to do. And so,
Yeah. 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 I think, yeah, I think you're exactly right. And it starts with knowing what your culture is. Like you as a brokerage owner or the leader, what is the culture that we have here? Are we a luxury brand? Are we a brand that really resonates with new agents? Like what is our thing? And then create that environment in your office. So if we like newer agents and we're recruiting a ton of them, then we want to have trainings, we want to have good mentorship programs, we want to have like outings that we do or like events in the office. One of the things that my broker did, and I absolutely love my broker that I worked for. I stayed with him the entire time. He's a wonderful broker. But he used to have all sorts of like really cool events, just
mhm,
celebrations in the office. And I'm talking like first rate, bring in bartenders and the whole set up a bar. We have tons and tons of food and carving stations. We'd invite all of our affiliates, our clients, our partners, and just have a good time and just celebrate
mhm,
with each
mhm,
other, and it was just a great culture there. So we just had a fun culture,
mhm.
and people wanted to work for him because he was a great guy.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, so we had really good
100%.
agent retention there.
Yeah. I went into one of the, are you in like the I'm assuming you have a Facebook too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you in some of like the real estate agent groups?
Yeah, I'm in a few of them. Honestly, I should be better about getting on there. I really don't get on there that much.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'll take a
It
peek every
it's
now and again.
Yeah, the reason why I'm in it like so much is because I love seeing so I like seeing more well, I like seeing both sides. Um I like seeing more of the qualitative data of like real estate agents tell me specifically what their problems are, because
Yeah.
then I feel like real estate agents being a client for a brokerage, they're basically telling me how to sell them and recruit them to my brokerage
Yes.
if I can solve that
Yes.
problem.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so
Totally.
like that's why I like, yeah. So but the reason why I bring that up is because culture was one of the most mentioned reasons for um it was either leaving a brokerage or going to a brokerage. I asked both of those
Yeah.
questions in the group and it got like hundreds of comments. And so and then I just made a list of like all the things that I seen mentioned the most times, and company culture was in there. And
Yeah, I'm
so
not surprised to hear that. Honestly, it's not money. I mean, money is up there, don't get me wrong. We all need to make money and it certainly should be up there because you need it to earn a living and feed yourself. But it's not
mhm,
the number one driving factor. Um, and I've heard culture quite a bit. I've also heard, I kind of boil it down to two things that I think people are starving for right now, especially after COVID, is we want community and we want knowledge. And I don't mean like tidbits of information that we're getting in this fast-paced world, but like actual real knowledge. So if we can provide education and community, I think a firm is going to position themselves to do really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. What would be your best guess in like consulting a brokerage on how to create community?
Well, I think you need to have things that draw people to the office. Everybody's so isolated, and I know it's more convenient. Like we're on Zoom all the time. I have a meeting, for example, tomorrow that's in the city. Generally my meetings are across the US, so I do take most of them on Zoom. But I have a meeting that happens to be in the city. I'm out in the suburbs of Chicago. And he asked me if I wanted to Zoom, and I'm like, no, I'm coming to see you. We need to meet in person. So Zoom is killing culture and it's killing community. It's extremely efficient. It saves us a lot of money. You don't need to hop on a plane. But I would say anytime that you can gather your people, even if it's like, hey, this Saturday we're going to go clean a park. We're doing this charitable event, or we're going to run a 5K, or what, we're having a pizza party. I mean, whatever it is, get your people used to coming into the office and train the people that are new to your firm that way as well. Like that's our culture. We meet every so often.
Yeah.
And not mandatory, but just like draw them in.
Yeah. 100%. I agree. I definitely agree. I never thought of it. Dang, that's so crazy. Because now that you think about that, so after coming out of COVID, me and my girlfriend, like we were thinking about that. We were like, we should go out more. Like we should just like see, just experience more things. And I think it is like being in the house for so long, even though it was me and her, we did puzzles, we played video games, we did like all that good stuff. But at the same time, it's like you kind of miss that, personal connection with somebody when you guys are there and you guys, get to, experience each other, in real time.
Yeah, my parents are not from this country. They come from a really small town in the Middle East. My parents are from Syria, and my mother was from the big city. They had like 30,000 people. Like that's the huge city. My father was rural. I mean, he grew up in a village of 100. Like they didn't have running water. He lived in a mud hut. Like, I mean, it was crazy to think about that now. But they were very communal. You had multiple generations living in one home. Everybody knew everyone. So they generally were, I don't know, having a sense of community, you just feel like more at peace, you feel more connected. People need people, we need human connection. We can't rely on machines all day or look at each other on a screen. And, when my parents came here, especially recently, they lost a lot of that. They're just not used to the way that we are here. Like to them, it's crazy that there's 4 of us siblings. We each have our own home. To them, that's nuts. Like, how does everybody we should all be living together. It's like such a different culture. And I think that's a bit extreme for me. But my point is to say, I think we've lost something when we disconnect too much from one another. Human beings are meant to be relational, and you can't get that on a screen.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree. You mentioned that you mentioned in the notes that we had that because I asked you about, I think it was recruiting. And you mentioned that you would argue that retention is more important than acquiring agents, like than recruiting. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think and don't get me wrong, I don't know that it's, more important, because so much of what I do is focused on recruitment, but I certainly think retention doesn't get as much attention as it needs. And it's easier to retain your agents than it is to recruit agents, and it's more cost effective. So I think that firms would benefit from having a strong focus on retention programs. Although I'm one of these people that anytime you ask me, how do we fix this broken system? I never, ever, ever, you won't catch me addressing what's broken on the surface. I will always go to the root, because I think you always need to lay a good foundation so that things blossom and bloom the way that they should. Trying to fix it on the surface or taking like a shallow approach to something like, oh, let's just, have more pizza parties. I think that's kind of like a band-aid. And I think that's good to do. Like we should do those things that are, more like on the surface, but you need to
Mhm.
start at the foundation. And what I mean by that is when you are going about recruitment, really trying to find, again, defining who you are, what kind of brand you are, what kind of agents you want to work with and you want at your firm. And then being very deliberate about recruiting those types of agents because they will ultimately stay longer. They'll have a better attitude. They'll lend to the culture much better. So I would say start at the recruitment level, like really start foundationally, building the structure that you want.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense because in marketing, I was taught to do the same. So where anytime I like look at somebody's like online, like digital marketing, I always ask the question, it's like, well, once the customers come in the door, like, do you have some sort of like referral marketing program in play? Do you have some sort of like repeat, like how are you getting the customers back to you? Because once you get that, one, that's the most cost-effective thing to implement to get more customers and to increase the order value per customer. But then at the same time, now once you turn on the faucet of more customers coming in through whatever medium, like now you have that system running and you're just a well-oiled, machine, overall like marketing machine. And so
Yeah,
it sounds like
exactly.
you take that, same approach for brokerage. That's very cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's you can transfer that attitude really to any business. I mean, I was at the SaaS company, and if you're experiencing high churn rates, don't try to like engage more with your clients. Dig deep and uncover what's causing the churn. Maybe
Mhm.
our onboarding process is broken, so it's like way back here we weren't doing it right and we set them up for failure essentially. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that's with any business. I would really like pull back the layers and go to the very, very beginning to see, is everything that we're doing right from the beginning? Have we laid the proper foundation to build upon?
Yep, 100%. 100%. I was speaking to an auto shop, and I was, going over like auditing his marketing performance and what was going on. And we stumbled upon he's been collecting phone numbers and addresses to his customers since 2014, and they average about 300 cars a month. And of that 300 cars, about 30% of them are new customers. And so
Oh,
I
wow.
was like, dude, like you have a database. I was like, is it safe to say that you have tens of thousands of people and they didn't have a CRM or nothing. It was like file storage.
Oh,
And
that's
so
funny.
yeah, and so like and he was like, yeah, can I do like some sort of like Facebook ad or something? And I'm like, dude, all of your new customers are in the customers that you have right now. Let's start there. And so yeah,
Yeah,
just peeling the layers back and starting at the core and the foundation. It's all about the fundamentals.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
What?
what my son's football coach says all the time. Every time the kids go haywire, he's like, they got to get them back to fundamentals.
Yep. Gotta get them back. And it sucks
Yeah.
because when you're like very talented, which I feel like there's a lot of talented business people out there, when you're really talented, it's easy to get away from the fundamentals. And so
Yeah.
just like an
Yeah.
athlete.
Yeah, and there's always like, especially in our business, there's always like all these shiny things, and there's so many like gurus and ninjas and also Jedis and all sorts of stuff that are telling you that, hey, these are the 3 things you need to do to accelerate your business, or the 5 things
Mm-hmm.
you should never do. And it's like there's just so much noise out there. So it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
filter through the noise. And that's why when I created Maverick, I specifically wanted to create something that would give you exactly what you need. Like these are the exact, if you're looking to grow your firm and recruit agent, and you want to grow agent recruitment, this is exactly all you need. Like I don't want to give you a million checklists and tools and tips and tricks and techniques. Just give you what you need, build the structure for you, and then we can either manage it for you or we step out and you manage it yourself, but we'll leave you with a playbook on how to manage it. But it
Yep.
was like just the fundamentals of what you actually need, because
Yeah.
I for many years, when I was younger, I would listen to all these different teachers, preachers, gurus, podcasts, videos, whatever. And some of them have really good information. There's a lot of really good information out there, but also some of it is very misleading,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're really seeking knowledge. and you're well intentioned in it, and you're like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. And it's like, now oftentimes they're just putting you on a hamster wheel where you'll just keep going back for more information that doesn't really affect your life or change it in any positive way whatsoever, but they're keeping you in their orbit, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of Maverick, Diana, where could brokerages find you? Like if they wanted help with recruitment and wanted to improve their business in that way, how would they be able to get with you?
Yeah, thank you. We have our website is MaverickRE.co, or you can just email us at info@MaverickRE.co.
Nice. Very cool. Diana, I really appreciate the time. I know that you're very busy, and just thank you for giving your 2 cents and your knowledge to our audience.
Yeah, this is super fun. I'm so glad we jumped on this call. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time chatting with you.